Hey, so I want to talk today about punishment in parenting and how to parent without punishment. So, if you don't know who I am, my name is Katie, and I want to give a little bit of my background. I know if you know me, you know a little bit about my background. I've talked about it before, but I've worked in childcare for a lot of my life, like working in environments with kids, whether in daycares or working in families where I work with kids one-on-one or in small groups or testing centers and all this stuff. So I've had lots of experience, like 12 years with other people's children, working with them. And I very much within that time worked within the common idea of punishment for consequence, trying to punish and create false consequences for a kid. So what do I mean by that? Like, in the environments that I worked in where I was working for a boss, if a child didn't behave in a way that was according to the rules, or they did something that was considered harmful or something like that, then as a teacher or instructor or whatever position I was in, I was responsible for punishing that child. So that might mean isolating them, like putting them in a room by themselves or away from other kids. It might mean taking certain privileges away. It might mean like talking to their parents and convincing the parents to take privileges away, or guilting the parents into taking privileges away. And then I got to see firsthand a lot when I was in people's homes working with their kids, where I was a tutor working with all different ages, what it was like for the kid when their parents were punishing them, implementing punishment, lots of different kinds of punishment. So it's really important for anyone making the argument of, oh, well, everybody has their different definitions of punishment. Go and actually clarify your definition of the word punishment. It doesn't mean consequence. They're not the same thing. So if you're trying to use consequence to mean punishment, but you're actually using the word punishment, you have a misunderstanding of the definition of the word punishment. Go and actually read the definition of the word punishment and support yourself to deal with that, because it's not effective how you're communicating if you're calling it punishment if you're actually implementing just consequences with your kids. Then how does that look? What does it look like? And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. What does it mean to support your child to face the natural consequences of things versus punishing? Because those two things are different. But a lot of people will say, we need to clarify, it depends on how you define punishment, but it's just consequence and communication, but then they're actually just punishing their children. So we'll talk about the difference. But anyway, so I just want to give some context for my ability to talk about this with authority here. I have been on the sort of like a research scientist side of things, observing parents and kids, seeing from both angles what a kid goes through when they're punished, what the parent is going through, what the parent's trying to implement, the lack of communication that's going on there, and then the result of that over time. Because a lot of the families that I've worked with them for many, many years, so I can see what happens to the relationship between parent and child when a parent implements punishment, whether it be physical punishment like spanking, or just what you might not even consider punishment, which is just like taking their TV away, taking their iPad away, putting them in timeout, grounding them, all that kind of stuff. So, so that's the context from which I got to see how punishment affects parent and child, and what happens in the long run for children. And I also have my own experience from when I was a kid, and then reflecting on that with my parents now. And so when I have kids, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old now. it was really cool because I could see that I didn't want to parent in, I wanted to investigate punishment. I wanted to really see, are there alternatives? And because generally what I had heard from parents was this, I heard this very often when I started really diving into reading a lot of parenting material, reading a lot of different books, like going on forums, listening to patient parenting podcasts and stuff like that, getting the feedback from real parents. So looking at the comments from people who weren't just the person on stage or the person writing the book talking about it, but people actually implementing things or not implementing things and just arguing online. But a really common argument that I got against parenting without punishment or patient parenting was this whole point of, either like, if you don't punish your kids, they're going to grow up to not know what the consequences are of their actions. And that is like a common one that I see very often. And then of course another one that I used to get when I was going through my whole process of working with lots of different people, and then making suggestions or looking at like, okay, can we find alternatives to this punishment thing that we're doing in this household or in the facility that I was working at? A lot of times I would get the point of, well, you don't really know what it's like to have kids because you don't have them. Now, that's a really shitty argument because you were a kid and you had parents. So you know what it was like. You know what it's like to be punished. You know what you were going through and what you understood from that punishment. And you know the breakdown in the relationship that happened for you with your parents when they would punish you. You got to see it happen. The only part you don't know is the side of what the parent is going through when they're punishing the kid, what the parent is trying to do, what fears they're going through, because most of the time it's coming from a point of fear, trying to prevent your kids from doing something you perceive as dangerous or trying to prevent some kind of behavior or something like that. And then not really knowing how to do that, and also not being able to effectively communicate with your kids. So then you just try to control, which is what a lot of punishment is. I would say all punishment is an attempt to control the child, whether physically or psychologically, mentally. It's some attempt to control. So again, those were the two big ones that I got. Like, your kid's not going to understand consequence if you don't punish them. They won't get it. And then the range of punishment within that is spanking, and some parents obviously beat their children. And then, taking things away, and then also rewarding good behavior. All that's kind of tied in together. I can do another video on rewarding and how it's just the polarity of punishment and how it really creates the same kind of the same consequence for the parent with their children. But so those are the two big arguments that I see against patient parenting, against parenting without punishment, which those I see are kind of equivalent in a lot of ways. So anyways, when I had my own kids, I knew that I wanted to do something different, but the only thing that I hadn't gone through was when you have children, a lot of things that you learn from your childhood, which I've talked about this before, but it's difficult to process this until you do actually have children. And if you have children, even if you have children, you might not be aware that this is happening. But if you're able to become aware of it, like, just watch out for it now. Become more aware of it. But especially when your kids are really little, you have certain behaviors and things that you've learned from your parents that you've literally downloaded from them and are in your subconscious and your unconscious. And those patterns of behavior activate when you become a parent. So a lot of the things that you say you would never do, like, I will never do that to my kids, or I'll never act like that, you'll find yourself doing those exact things that you said you were never going to do when you actually have children, because you're just activating all this stuff that you just took from your parents and from the environment around you, or from whoever was taking care of you. It might be your daycare providers or your nanny or whoever, your grandparents. A lot of that you just took in, you just absorbed, because little kids are just like sponges, right? Especially in the very, very early years. And then you just reflect it. It kind of stays within you, and you reflect it back out massively the moment that you have children. So that's why it's so essential to start supporting yourself before you have kids, to deal with a lot of that fear and start to uncover these patterns that you've just absorbed and are lying there kind of dormant. And if you're already a parent, like, start dealing with that stuff. You have to start becoming aware, and you'll see it. I'll show some examples. I'm going to give you my example, because I've been walking a process of supporting myself to become more self-aware, and using a tool, self-forgiveness, and using TechnoTutor as well to support myself to get rid of these things that are just coming up, like subconsciously and unconsciously, that are not me, like they're not a self-directed point, but they're coming up as parenting points, and then experimenting with and testing, how do I actually want to be with my child? What kind of support do I want to give them actually? And how do I actually facilitate my kid to be stable? Not to try to force him to have a certain kind of behavior that I don't even really fully understand, but to support him to be able to understand me effectively when I'm talking to him, and to support him to be able to understand natural consequence. So, okay, I want to give a really good example of all of this. So when my son was born, I walked through a lot of stuff with fear and all this kind of stuff, which I can talk more about in another video, but I want to give this particular example because it's really great. And I had a lot of people talking to me about when I got pregnant with my daughter. I had a lot of people ask me, like, how do you think you're going to deal with jealousy? And I was like, well, I mean, I've never had to deal with it with my own children. I've dealt with it with the people that I've worked with, throughout my career, working with kids. But it'll be interesting to play that out for myself and see what I can do, what comes up within me, and what I can become more aware of, what I can forgive, what I can support myself to remove from my expression that isn't supportive, and what I can change, and how I can direct myself. So when my daughter was born, at first it was pretty relaxed in the sense of Max was not really too super concerned about her. She wasn't as affecting his life as much. I mean, she was crying a lot and stuff like that, and she needed a lot of my attention, but I could manage giving my attention to both of them, because she was just kind of there and able to be with us while we were with him. So there was a certain point, she hit a certain age, I would say around like 8 months, like 7 or 8 months. Yeah, 7 or 8 months, where she started crawling, and she started getting a bit more into the things that he was doing. So Max walked through this point where he would try to hit her, or not really hard, like a little kid. He's only like 2.5 or whatever. And he would try to hit her on the head, or just kind of you could see him get really frustrated about her being around, like touching his things or taking something out of his hand. And so we walked this point for a while. But let me talk a little bit about what I was going through, because the most important thing when you're looking at whether or not to punish your kids is what's going on within you where you feel as though you need to punish. And then when you're dealing with that stuff, then you can start to look at, okay, but how do I actually support my kid to stop, my toddler to stop hitting my baby, because that's not effective either. But the part I really had to look at was this point within me, because it came up of, I should be punishing him for hitting her. Like, I had this deeply ingrained belief, even after all the stuff that I've been supporting myself with through of my process of removing all of those patterns of thinking that weren't effective, and really supporting myself to become be on an equal playing field or equal support field with the people that I'm around and the people that I'm with, and really checking myself within that. I still had this point come up of like, he should be punished. He should be punished. And I had this thought within me of like, he should be punished. And the thought came along with a feeling of a lot of stress and pressure within my chest. And then I would get angry. Like I would feel the anger come up. And any parent, I'm sure, has seen this come up within themselves. Maybe not everyone, but I can say for myself. And I would just feel this massive anger come up whenever he would hit her. And I didn't sit around and allow him to hit her. That's not the point here. But I was looking at, okay, why do I have this feeling sort of like rage coming up when he would hit her? And I did a lot of massive, extensive self-forgiveness on the idea of jealousy between siblings, and also for myself, the rage and the anger that comes up when I can't control another being. So I had to work through a lot of that. And I won't go into a lot of details on that because I might do that in another video, like talk about all of that. But so then dealing with my own personal stuff, all the self-forgiveness, all the anger, the frustration, the feelings that come up, what was going on in my physical body. I did extensive writing, and then supporting myself in Technotutor to work through all the thoughts that were coming up, all the feelings that were coming up, all of my own stuff, the pattern of anger when it comes to sibling rivalry, or when it comes to not being able to control my child's behavior. So what's the result? Okay, because when I was working through all of that stuff and kind of becoming more self-aware of like, okay, I have a lot of stuff going on within me that I have to deal with if I want this to work effectively with the three of us, with my daughter, my son, and myself. I want that to go smoothly, so I need to start working on my own stuff, and then I can support them more effectively. So then I started doing more research, like looking, okay, what other resources can I use to kind of come up with a framework for myself of how do I support my son in those moments to understand that my daughter is hurt when he hits her. So a lot of that was supporting my son to actually understand the words that I was going to be using to communicate to him the consequence of what he's doing to my daughter, Seneca. So a lot of that was like the words. I mean, we made a list. We would make lists, right? In Technotutor, supporting him with the words that I was going to be using. So like hit, bite, kick, like just all the sets of words. I mean, I have all these lists of the ones that I did with Max, working with him specifically on sister, brother, family, I would build in her name, Seneca, like all of these words, so that when I was talking to him and communicating with him in those moments where he was very frustrated, he would be able to process what I was saying. Okay, so that was one big part. So what did I do in those moments where he would hit her? Okay, so I had to support myself. Firstly, he would hit her, I would pick her up, I would hold her because she's crying, and then I supported myself to breathe. Just to support myself to breathe so that I could check in that moment, like, do I have any other stuff still going on? Like, is there pressure coming up? Is there any rage coming up? Is there any frustration coming up? And then just support myself to kind of ground in that moment and that's not woohoo. That's just, you're just supporting yourself to breathe and not act out of a reaction, right? So not do something towards my son or towards my daughter out of a reaction that is just that emotion coming up in the moment of anger, right? So, and again, because when you're parenting, you have to kind of do things in, everything in the moment too. I'm walking through this whole process of writing for myself this whole time while I'm implementing this stuff with my kid. So picking my daughter up, holding her, and not saying anything, shutting up and breathing, okay? And letting my son see me, not angry with him, holding my daughter, breathing, making sure she was okay. And then when she stopped crying, okay? And when I'm letting the point go, asking him what happened. And it's really cool. I want to talk really quickly before I keep going on this example. While I was researching a lot of this stuff, because I read a lot of patient parenting points, but I found this really great book. If you're dealing with the sibling point too, I got a lot of really cool tips from this book. It's called Peaceful Parent, Happy Sibling. She has another book, Dr. Laura Markham, called Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, right there. This is really cool. She's got a lot of really cool examples of like how to deal with certain scenarios that you're in. Like if your kid's out there fighting with another kid at a playground, like what can you do? And what I like about Dr. Markham, and I may have talked about this before in another video, but I like her because I've seen videos of her with her adult children going through run-throughs of these scenarios of what you would do with your kid in certain situations. And I really, really I used a lot of the things, not exactly, I don't do it exactly the way that she does it in these books, but it gives you a lot of perspective as to what's possible in terms of communicating with your kids in those moments of extreme frustration, where he's frustrated, she's frustrated, I'm frustrated, like supporting that whole dynamic, and then supporting how you can speak to your kids in a way that's more effective. So I just wanted to bring that up really quickly because there's lots of resources out there. I like that one. I do things a little bit differently in the sense that I actually make sure I build in my kids' vocabulary, the words I'm going to be using, which is a totally different level. And I'll explain more of the results of what we've done with Max. But anyways, that book is cool. So I'm quiet, holding Seneca, and then as we're both kind of calmed down, I'm making sure I'm calm, she's calm. I ask my son what happened. And this is not from an accusatory point. I don't come from accusing him of anything. And then he might say something like, I don't know. Or a lot of times he would say, because we'd been building his vocabulary the whole time, he could communicate to me what he had done. Like he would say, I hit Seneca. I hit her, or I kicked her, or something. And I would ask him, well, why did you do that? Because what I realized is a lot of times when kids are hurting, and you could watch this, like if you were actually present and you weren't off doing something else or having your attention away somewhere else, if you watch two kids in the moments before they get in some kind of argument or fight, you can see why. Like the kids are not able to communicate with each other effectively. So a lot of times to deal with the frustration of one kid wanting something that the other kid doesn't understand, or vice versa, it plays out, and then one kid gets frustrated with the other. And of course, Seneca can't really communicate yet at all. So the way that Max expressed his frustration was to hit her or kick her or something like that. And again, not hard. He's only 2.5, so it's not a huge deal. But it was a huge deal to him to stop her from doing whatever she was doing. So then I would talk to him about what happens when you hit her. Does Seneca understand that? And he would say no. And he would say, oh, she cries. And I would explain to him, like, would you like someone to hit you? Like, do you like it when someone hits you or if someone kicks you? Would you like it if Seneca did that to you? And he would say no. And then we would say I would say the most effective thing that we can do in these situations, if you're trying to play with something here and you want to play by yourself, you can go in another room if you'd like. Or if you want to play with me, because Seneca has to be with me right now because she's not sleeping, but I do have to be with her. If you'd like to play with all of us, we can do that instead. So you have a choice. You can go play by yourself if you'd like in the other room. And sometimes he would choose that. He would go into the other room and close the door and play by himself. Or you can stay with me and Seneca. And a lot of times he would choose that as well. Like he would choose to be with me and be with Seneca too. So the main point within all of this is I would not blame him. I would not get angry at him, and I would not blame him for being frustrated with Seneca, even though she's little. And I would really support myself to not participate in that point of anger and rage towards my kid, and to not go into a comparison between the two of them or amplifying the thing that was happening between the two of them. And then I didn't go into also afterwards any sort of paranoia around, oh, they're going to get into an argument, or oh, he's going to hit her or something like that. I just made sure that I was there as much as possible with the two of them, so that if it were to happen again, or I could catch it before it's going to happen, that would be great. But if it happened again, supporting my daughter so that she knows that, that is not going to keep happening to her over and over and over and over again without me being present and making sure that Max stops. And then just supporting her to feel better. And, because kids go through this, kids are going to get hit, they're going to fall down, they're going to do all this kind of stuff. So you're going to have to walk through that regardless. But I wanted to make sure that I didn't create now an association for my daughter with my son that is like hurting and arguing and yelling and screaming and anger and all this stuff that goes along with my reaction that would come from anger. The punishment part, the punishment that, might send him into the other room to be by himself and all that kind of stuff. Because the moments where I would want to do that, because I'd have the anger come up and I feel like I would want to send him into another room, or if I would feel the point of wanting to hit him. Because that comes up. Like I'm sure my parents walked through that between me and my sister when we were younger. And so I still had the point within me, again, subconsciously, unconsciously, of the automatic response to my kid hitting my son hitting my daughter would be to want to hit him. And I had to really deal with that point because it comes up and people don't want to talk about it. The patient parenting, people don't want to talk about it either, but it definitely comes up of wanting to punish, wanting to hit. And I had to support myself to clarify that within myself and not allow that to be acceptable, not accept that as an expression of what I should actually do with my kid ever. And if that were to come up with me, if I had actually hit him, that would, you have to take it off the table. You just have to take it off the table as not an option. Because if you do, you'll create something like what I'm going to tell you about. So we walked that for a while of maybe every day, multiple times a day, that exact scenario coming up, and me developing what I needed to communicate with him more and more so that he could understand the natural consequence, not the consequence that I was imposing on him, but the natural consequence of here's a being in your environment that you're now hitting, who you're hurting, and what would that be like if someone did that to you? Instead of actually doing it to him and trying to force him to learn that consequence, because then he'll just associate me with some kind of fear that he might be walking through. Instead, I supported him to understand what she's going through, and then to look at how he can change that dynamic so that whatever she was doing that he was getting frustrated with, if he could change his environment, if he can't work through the frustration, or if he could just breathe through it and not get frustrated, or try to come to me and communicate with me what was going on so that I can facilitate. Those are all better options than hitting. Hitting is not an option in this situation. It's not acceptable. So I didn't talk to my son some people think it's oh, well, you're just a pushover and you're not dealing with that effectively. It's I didn't talk to my son sweetly necessarily. I didn't do some artificial thing. I just spoke with him very directly about what was going on and what he was doing to Seneca, but without blame, without anger, really dealing with that so that it didn't turn into anger and frustration, an expression of that. So let's fast forward to now. It's been months since Max has hit Seneca or kicked her or done any of that. And we really saw that when, it's been a while now, but it was really cool this morning. I wanted to just share a little bit. This morning, Seneca, there's this toy that we have in our house that Max really, really likes. It's a little toy ambulance, but when he plays the sound on the ambulance, for some reason, that particular sound, Seneca has it's a very harsh sound. It's a very abrasive sound. So when she hears it, she'll listen to it for a few moments and then start crying. And it was really cool this morning because that's happened a couple of times where we just sit with Seneca and breathe and turn the ambulance off, or just support her to walk through the sound, having that sound come up. But it was really cool because Max took Seneca's hand this morning. I was standing in the kitchen. Max took her hand and took her into the playroom, and then they were both playing around, and he turned on that ambulance sound, and then he looked at her and he very quickly turned it off, and then turned it back on and turned it off again, and was pushing it so that you could kind of hear a little bit of the sound and then it would go off. And he was explaining to her, he was like trying to show her, this is how you turn it off and on. And then there was this one point where he turned it on and he left it on a little bit longer, and he was really closely watching her face. And then after a certain point, he turned it off, like to almost turn it off before she went into that crying reaction that she's been having so many times lately around that particular sound. And that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, because it was like he was reflecting back to us something that we'd walked through with him, with some abrasive sounds that he was having reactions to when he was a kid too. We did that, a very similar process of support. And then he was very good at seeing, because she didn't cry, which was just, I was sitting there going, what's going to happen? Like I'm getting ready to walk in, you know, if it becomes something where the sound is too much for her just to support her, because she's still really little. But he turned it right off right when maybe he could see that she was about to go into that. And then she didn't cry at all. So here's the thing. I know that we're going to walk through points with our kids still. That my kids are 3 and 1, but I can tell you the difference is that when stuff like that comes up, when things come up between them, which is not happening, like that thing that I perceived was abusive between the two of them hasn't been coming up lately. But as it comes up, like I can see the tools and the approach that actually works to make sure that they then don't create a rivalry between them. And I'm not creating an association between like him getting in trouble for something that he might do to her. And just one more point that I want to bring up too is, now if something happens to Seneca, or like maybe he like closes the door as she's walking out accidentally or something like that, and she starts crying, if I ask my son what happened, he will immediately tell me the truth. He tells me exactly what happens, instead of learning to lie to me because I've punished him in the past for things that he's done to her. So I never punish, I have not punished, and now he tells me exactly what's going on. So just think about that for a moment, because my son can trust that I'm not going to then just hit him for doing something to her, okay? He's still a little kid. Like the idea that you would spank a kid his age for hitting his baby sister it's insane. Like you just learn to lie. You learn that hitting is okay. You learn to submit to some authority that doesn't even communicate things with you because you're afraid. You just develop fear. So I'm supporting my son to not create an association of fear with me or my daughter or my husband. Like we don't participate in punishing our kids. And what we're seeing is our kids are developing very effectively, and they're really good at communicating, and they trust us. So, I mean, wouldn't you want your child? I know it's more challenging. I get that, and I know it's hard to walk out of the old. It's like fucking archaic. The archaic concept of punishing your kid, because you were raised that way with punishment and reward, and the school system uses punishment and reward. But if you're willing to walk out of that, if you're willing to support yourself, to really realize that when you're punishing your kid, it's actually because you've got a lot of stuff going on inside you that you might not want to admit to, or you're feeling guilty, or something's going on in here that you have to deal with, you have to face, because it's not coming up from you. It's just coming up, right? And you're reacting in that moment, and you're just like gritting your teeth, and like you just feel like you have to punish your kid, right? Or even if you're able to be calm within that, then why punish? Why not just communicate and talk? Because we were all punished, and we all know what it was like to be a teen. Like you think you're going to use punishment for your little kid, what's going to happen when they're teenagers? Like if you're getting frustrated with your kid and angry at them and all this stuff when they're a little tiny kid, what do you think is going to happen when they're teenagers? Like, what do you think that's going to happen when you literally physically can't control their behavior? You're just going to end up with a kid who's totally rebellious, who doesn't trust you, who really kind of deep down hates you a lot. Like, why create that? Why not create someone that you're actually growing up with? As you're growing as a parent, you're taking a being and supporting them to be really effective and not afraid of the adults around them. So not afraid of being able to communicate and not feeling like they need to lie in order to get out of being in trouble, which just isolates them in their mind, right? So anyways, I wanted to share that little bit. Again, a lot of the argument against what I'm saying today is going to be, oh, your kids are not old enough. You don't really know. It's like, yeah, I do. I know what my experience was like as a kid. So do you. Like, let's just be honest and really, you just need to be self-honest. Just be honest with yourself. You don't need to tell me about it. I know what it was like being a kid. I know walking through all of that. So, and I know the kids around me. It's not that challenging. You don't need to have had kids to understand this. It's not that complex. It's basic common sense. If you punish your kids, you're going to create a point where they feel like they're still going to want to do things. They're still going to have points within them where they make mistakes, and they're probably just going to lie to you about it in order to avoid punishment. Because all of us want to avoid punishment. Like, as an adult, you need to admit that too. So I know this video has been going on for a while. I will do another video where I talk about, okay, like how do you support, not impose, how do you support boundaries? How do you deal with talking about rules with your kids? Like, what do you do within all of that to help prevent the situations where you would want to punish? Prevent's a good word. Like, we'll talk more about that in another video, but I wanted to give this framework so that you could see the results of really supporting your kid without punishment. It's very effective. It takes time and it takes consistency with yourself, and it really takes you understanding how to work through your own stuff so that you're not going through all this pressure and frustration and stress and anger and all of that when you're trying to interact with your kids. Because you should interact with your kids in the same way that you would want another adult to interact with you. You wouldn't want another adult to punish you and not hear what you had to say. So yeah, anyways, I'll leave it there for today. If you have any questions, let me know. You can post them in the comments below, or you can send me a message. But or if there's any other videos that you would like to see me do or to talk about, I can do that. But yeah, anyways, I'll leave it there for today, and we'll talk later. Bye.